entertained? Are you not entertained? Is this not why you are here?
Whoa. The Elden Ring.
Alright guys, so let's talk about stats first. So obviously we're level 125 here. That's kind of the organic meta, I think, right now for PvP. But really it's kind of the organic meta because that's where a lot of people end the game. You know, there's argument to be made for 150, but I think 125 is a sweet spot. So you know, anyways, you can go obviously up, down from this. I just wanted to give you guys a good baseline. So let's talk Vigor. More is good. You run out, you're dead, right? Vigor is your life pool. So let's get a decent amount of Vigor. I felt 40 was good enough because this should be, you know, not just a straight up tank build. You should be moving and dodging and stuff like that. So there should be more than enough there. Mind I went with 11. I just left it there because I just played through the whole game. Rivers of Blood, all that stuff. Never really found myself needing more FP. If you want to pump more in there, I would take 5 away from dexterity or so and put it in there. If you find yourself, you know, wanting to do that, not use flasks as often. For me, it was no issue. Endurance is a really big stat for us, and specifically, I have it at 27. You're probably gonna want to leave it at 27 because it determines our equip weight. So our roll speeds depend on our equip weight. So we wanted to be at the sweet spot where I had a ton of defense for you guys, for newer players and stuff, and min-max the defense to weight ratio. And I have a whole guide on that, so go check that video if you haven't, where I have an entire Excel sheet breaking down at you know, 15 endurance, 20 endurance, all this stuff. At each breakpoint, what is the best combination of armor, best helmet mixed with the best, you know, chest armor from another set. And so definitely go check that out. Very, very good. And then, you know, make your decisions from there if you want to change things up. But for the purpose of this video, 27 endurance with the talismans we use and everything and the weapons we use, it gave us exactly, you know, the wiggle room we needed to stay at a medium roll and get really good defense. So then strength, we leave it at 12 because the only time we ever need more is when we're running our twin blade setup, in which case we need 17, and we can get that from our Radagon Source Seal. We'll talk about that talisman and all that stuff later. So then we get to dexterity, and that's our first, you know, damage stat. Dexterity and arcane are 2 damage stats. Dexterity is really nice. It provides a lot of damage for the blood affinity, whereas arcane provides a lot more damage on the occult affinity. So since we're running mostly the blood affinity here, dex is going to be really, really nice for us, especially with the twin blade setup that you see I'm holding now, and we'll get more on that in a second. But yeah, dex is a really good stat for your damage, flat out. You know, it's very important. The intelligence, we didn't touch this build, we didn't need it. Faith, you're probably wondering why I have 15 instead of the base 8. You can take those 7 points, put them into a damage stat. I recommend dexterity or arcane, or more health if you find that, you know, you're a newer player, you want more health. But I found faith to be just convenient for me because you know, the incantation that I run for my buff setup, the you know, flame grant me strength, it costs 15 faith, and rather than go to 10 faith and then have to change a talisman to put on a, you know, +5 faith talisman every time I got to a boss store and wanted to buff, or a big fight and wanted to buff, it was just a lot more convenient for me to just throw those 7 points in there. Again, take those 7 points, put them somewhere else if you don't care about that little bit extra damage in the buff. Arcane, another big stat for us, so that's another huge damage dealing stat. It directly increases the bleed scaling. So you'll see and we'll show you this stuff later. The blood stat on your weapons is going to directly scale off arcane, and that's the rate at which you proc a bleed. So if you have a much higher you know, blood stat, then you're going to, and we're going to increase that further with Seppuku, we'll talk about that later, but that's going to make you proc those big bleed chunks a lot faster the higher that stat is on the weapon. So again, we'll get really in detail on that stuff, but just remember, you know, if you're newer to the game, that arcane is going to directly affect your bleed procs, you know, the rate at which you're doing these bleed procs, and it's going to scale if you go occult, which in this setup here, you're better off occult than a keen from a keen affinity. Keen scales off of dex, and occult scales off arcane and a little bit of dex. And I just found that my raw, if you're wanting just raw physical damage and not trying to proc a bleed, so a boss that's immune to bleed, I would recommend going occult. No one's really mentioning that. Everybody's saying, oh, go keen, you know, if you're fighting something that can't bleed. No, if you're a arcane build like this, go occult. You'll see much more damage. Trust me. Try it for yourself if you don't believe me, and take a look. So that should cover the stats and all that stuff. So let's get into the variations now and kind of look at the 3 builds themselves. Okay, so first up, we got our Twin Blade build. So the Blood Godskin Peeler. So we take a Godskin Peeler. I haven't maxed it out yet for the purposes of the video. And we're going to put Seppuku on it. Seppuku Ash of War. And you see at the bottom, look at the Blood Loss buildup, 129. So the Twin Blades are going to have the highest Blood Loss buildup, you know, at the same relative arcane stat of any weapon in the game I found. So the Blood Godskin Peeler is the best scaling. If you can get a second one through New Game Plus, that's what you want to be running, is 2 of those. I haven't gone to New Game Plus yet on this character. Just made him today. Just beat the game. So I'm running a regular Twin Blade here next to it. But you see, they'll both have the 129 bleed proc passive effect. See there, the 129 blood loss passive effect on the Twin Blade. Just the peeler scales a little bit better in dex, so you're going to see a little bit more raw damage, and it's not major, but it is enough to where it's worth running 2 peelers if you can get a second peeler. You know, the Twin Blade's nice though for now, for filling the role that it fills until we get to New Game Plus. Again, you still see that 129, which is, you know, on the same. You'll see the other stuff later that we're running in this build, like the Katanas and stuff. They're a little lower. We'll see all that in a minute. So run a dagger, any dagger you want, just because they're really lightweight, with the Golden Vow Ash of War on there. That's going to give us a huge damage boost, you know, for all sorts of damage. So incantations, raw physical damage, everything. Totally worth running. So then I went and grabbed the Dragon Communion Seal because we're a arcane build and this scales as soft arcane. So we don't do a lot of incantations and stuff, but this is, you know, for the ones we do use, this is perfect. So grab this and throw it in there. The White Mask is worth grabbing. It gives 10% more damage for 20 seconds after proccing a bleed, which we just proc bleeds nonstop, even from when you use your Seppuku. That procs a bleed technically, so you get 10% damage boost for 20 seconds every time you proc a bleed, including off your Seppuku, which we'll talk more in depth on Seppuku and the damage numbers on that in a little bit when we get to the Katana setup. But the White Mask is really invaluable for this build. So then the Raptor's Black Feathers gives a flat 10% to jump attacks, and since all we're doing, basically the whole build is jump attacks, it's basically a flat 10% damage to the build, because with Twin Blades, you basically want to be jump attacking everything. So this is less about defense and more of like an offensive armor piece here that we have, just specific to the Twin Blade setup. And then we kind of make up some of that defense with the Veteran Gauntlets, which are incredible, you know, pound to defense ratio, and Bulgo Greaves, which are, again, you know, weight to defense ratio. Radagon Soresil, we need the 5 strength to be able to run the Twin Blade, so that gives us that, along with basically 20 levels. The Claw Talisman gives us a 15% damage to jump attacks. Again, we jump a lot in this build, so 15% flat damage basically to the entire build. So then the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia gives us 22% damage maximum. So it basically just ramps up. The more damage, the more successive attacks you do. So, you know, as we're attacking a lot in this build, it just, you do more and more. I think it starts at like 6%, goes up to 22. Lord of Blood's Exaltation is amazing for a bleed build, because it gives us 20% damage for 20 seconds every time we use Seppuku or proc a bleed on someone, which is literally just non-stop. We're either hitting Seppuku before a boss and then immediately proccing bleeds and more bleeds, and so we just always have that buff up. So we're going to talk a lot about tiers here in a second, but I'll just kind of quickly go over the Thorny Crack tier. Basically just gives you like the same exact effect as the Rotten Wing Sword Insignia, except it goes all the way up to 35%. So successive attacks, just all the way up to 35%. So it's actually incredible for a bleed build. Stone Barb Crack tier is good for you know, breaking stance. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. But not a lot of bleed builds are running Thorny Crack tier, and I don't know why, because it's like basically, you know, the best in slot for your flask on a bleed build. The dexterity knot is a good option if you want just some extra damage, just flat, damage or 10 dexterity for 3 minutes. That's really nice because it lasts the full 3 minutes and it gives a nice damage boost. Leaden Hard Tea is a really cool and interesting one that I like to use on a bleed build. If you're playing very aggressive, it boosts your poise. You have infinite poise for like 10 seconds, so you won't get knocked down or attack staggered or anything like that. So you can just like go off and deal a ton of damage without worrying about poise. The Stonebar Corrector we talked about, it's decent for breaking stance on like NPCs and stuff. For 30 seconds, you get 30% more posture damage, so it's pretty decent. So use whatever you want to use in the first slot, but make sure that in the second slot you have the Thorny Cracked here for that 35% more damage on successive hits, because it's literally like a Millicent's Prosthesis or a Rotten Sword Insignia, but 150% stronger. So I don't know why no bleed builds are using it. It's definitely best in slot. Have that in your flask. So let's move into our build variation 2, where we're running the dual katanas, which is a pretty popular build. So the katana itself, obviously we're just going to have seppuku on both of them, duplicate dash war, pretty standard stuff on a bleed build. The cool thing about seppuku is, and there's not a lot of data out there on this, so I did some testing to give you guys some. On a plus 25 blood katana, I got 319 additional damage and 110 blood boost, your passive effect that caused blood loss buildup. I got a blood loss buildup of an additional 110, which is insane, and I got 319 more physical damage from seppuku. So, seppuku right now is extremely powerful, and you should be using it. So, the cool thing on the dual katanas is you hit a little bit harder, and with your crouching L1 attacks at the same time, and the jumping L1 attacks at the same time. So it's extremely powerful, and it procs bleeds like crazy. It's really powerful. I don't have to go into like all that because you guys have seen 1,000 videos on bleed builds on the katanas. So Golden Vow, we're gonna go. Same thing here. Dagger with Golden Vow, great buff to have. Same Dragon Communion Seal that we had in the Twin Blade. So then the White Mask stays the same. You can run the same chest, the Raptor's Black Feather, if you want more jump damage here, but Ronin's armor gives us more defense. So I wanted to show people the best in slot here setup. Again, you can check out my guide video on the armor and best in slot for different endurance levels, but Ronin's is incredible, and it's best in slot here. And then the Veteran Gauntlets and the Bullgoat Greaves again. So that combination right there, it puts us right up to the maximum that we can be on a normal roll and gives us the most defense that we can have at this endurance point. So Lord of Blood's Exaltation, that and the Rotten Wing Insignia are going to be on all 3 variants because those 2 are just too good to get rid of on a bleed build. But we do have some flexibility on our second 2 talismans here. So you can go Claw Talisman again if you're finding yourself doing a lot of jump L1s to get that quick bleed proc off, to get the double swipe. I'm almost always with seppuku is going to be an instant bleed proc with a jump L1 where you get the double swing, or a crouch L1 double swing. Bogo Talisman's really cool. It gives us a lot of poise on this build. So you see we have 59 poise right now with the armor setup we have and this talisman. If we go to another talisman, you see it goes down to 44. So we're getting 15 poise. It's 33.3%. Happens to give us 15 poise with our setup, which is awesome if you want to like trade blows and not get staggered a lot. Adding poise is definitely a good option. But if you're looking for a good defensive option, you're a newer player, the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman is insane. So you see those blue numbers on the far right there, the 41 damage resistance. Look at how much our resistance jumps up from 26 to 41. And I tested this, so even going, with with something like the Arsenal's Great Jar, and trying to throw on like heavier armor, there's no combination that comes anywhere near. So the Radagon Sword Seal is good if you're dodging more instead of like trying to trade hits, because you see we get less damage reduction. But you see the damage on our weapons go way up, because that's just it's a really good talisman to add 20 free levels basically. And the Godskin Swaddling Cloth is another really good one. So successive attacks restore HP, and we're just doing constant successive attacks, so just restoring HP all the time. So if you're looking for a more aggressive playstyle with like a self heal, that's a really good option as well. So you've got a lot of good options to mix and match in those last two slots. I mean, another good one is like a defensive, like the Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman, and then the Godskin Swaddling Cloth. So that way you've got a ton of defense and you're getting health back as you attack successively. So really do kind of whatever you want those last two slots. For the flask, we're running kind of the same thing, except like we talked about in that flask slot 1, throw whatever you want in there. And then that pretty much covers the katanas. So we'll move on, and the next variation that we are going to go to is the Rivers of Blood, which is another very popular build, and we have to change nothing. So let's kind of get into that. All right, so Rivers of Blood is popular for a reason, right? It's very, very powerful weapon. It's got an inherent 72 Bloodlust buildup at plus 10. And then it's physical fire, right? So if something's got a weakness fire, you're going to see even bigger, damage spikes and stuff like that. But really, it's the skill that we're after. And a lot of people I see throw this build together, and they're not taking advantage of it. So their talismans are set up for, just kind of regular dual katana builds and stuff like that. Whereas, like, we're going to maximize the damage we can do with that weapon art, right? Because that's really what you're after with the Rivers of Blood. With you're going to have a katana in your offhand so that you can have regular, L1 spam attacks and jump attacks and all that stuff. But really what we're after is that weapon art, because that weapon art does a ton of damage and it dishes it out extremely fast. So really what I wanted to do was min-max this variation, so where we had a lot of defense and we weren't getting poise broke. But and see, we still have the seppuku here, because that procs our bleed, which procs our white mask and all those buffs, but also for that flat damage increase is really nice as well. So we're running a regular katana, and then we're still running our Golden Vow dagger setup, and we're still running our Dragon Communion seal that we've been running, and we're still running our white mask for the same buffs, the 10% damage from the bleed procs and the seppuku bleed proc. And similarly to the dual katana build, we're going to run Ronin's armor again. I set this one up pretty defensive as well, because a lot of new players are running this variation because the ease of use and how strong it is. You have to go with Radahn's gauntlets though, so that's the change here in the armor from the veteran, because we were too heavy, so you were fat rolling with the veteran. So we're going to go Radahn's gauntlets in this slot, and now and then we still use the Bullgoat Greaves, but with the Radahn's gauntlets and Bullgoat Greaves, we are min-maxed for the best possible defense at this breakpoint of endurance. And that's taken into all the defensive account. You can go look at the data on my spreadsheet and that guide if you want. Just head to my channel, I got a video. Obviously, we're still running, Lord of Blood's Exaltation and Runway Insignia, because we always, obviously, on a bleed build, want to take advantage of that 42% combined damage increase we get from these two talismans. So they're on every single build for a reason. So the big thing here that a lot of people aren't running on their Rivers of Blood builds is Shard of Alexander, which is a flat 15% damage to your weapon art skill. So like it's literally just a 15% damage to your Rivers of Blood weapon art, so which is what you're basically spamming the whole game, especially if you're a newer player running that build. You're gonna find yourself spamming that left trigger button a lot, and this is just 15% damage. The Bullgoat Talisman I really like for this, because that extra poise prevents you from getting your attacks interrupted. So when you're trying to spam the like triple attack or something off the River of Blood, it prevents you from getting interrupted. You can always switch out that in that slot for like Godskin Swaddling Cloth is really good, healing on successive attacks, or a more defensive option like Dragon Crest Great Shield Talisman. Like we talked about in the dual katana build, insane boost to your physical defense, which most of the big hits you're taking in this game are physical. You can always go Claw Talisman too if you find yourself wanting to jump attack, to try to proc bleeds and stuff, because you still have seppuku on your regular katana. I mean, the 4 slot is where I would play around and put in whichever one of those you wanted, or even something else that you think of that you want. Our flask is the same, so I'm not even going to touch that. We've talked on that too many times already in this video. You probably hate me for that already. So that's pretty much it. That's all 3 build variations. And you guys can take that and run with it or change it, however you guys want to. I just wanted to there were a lot of questions on the channel, about the endgame bleed build. So I wanted to give you guys a couple of options, right? Because I hate getting bottlenecked into, and then I put out a Rivers of Blood one, and then you're like, well, I don't like spamming the Rivers of Blood weapon art. I want to do something different. And that's where I kind of pieced together the Twin Blade build, and I didn't want to go to New Game Plus and grab another Godskin peeler and then show this like super OP build, and then you're like, well, I can't get 2 Godskin peelers. So I wanted to keep it something that you know, build that you can put together on your first playthrough ever, you know, a new player to the series, and you have a couple options, and you can find which one you think is the easiest play style, because they all do insane damage right now. And again, you know, if and then by the way, I don't mention this a lot in my videos, but I'm a really small channel, and you know, the algorithm definitely doesn't like small channels, and I'm trying to get all this, you know, I try to get real concise data, not clickbait. Like a lot of these bleed build videos are just full of clickbait, so I want to give you guys like real data, and that's why if you go to like my armor guide, where we have basically an algorithm that pieced together the best in slot, you know, combinations of armor at every different weight point, and and then I went ahead and did a video just going over real quick for the samurai, to kind of show how to use the table the best at the 15 endurance, 20, 25, 30, 35, and 40 endurance breakpoints, you know, where your medium roll weight would be and what the best in slot for head, chest, hands, and feet would be, the combination, and then just to kind of show how to use the table and stuff. And so, you know, like these real data videos that I'm trying to get out to you guys, it would just help a lot if you guys just throw a like. It takes, you know, half a second, and you're not, you know, it's not like you're you know, buying a magazine subscription where you're gonna have some junk come to your front door every day. It's just a one-time like on a video, and it really helps us a lot. And you know, if you like the content, definitely feel free to sub if you're wanting to see, you know, when we put out the new videos. We've been doing a series on the overpowered in 15 minutes. So we have a lot of so we have a bleed, a battle mage, a dual katana mage, a one-shot faith build that I use to one-shot every boss in the game, and I'll have the end game build for that. That's, you know, just like this build, but the end game faith build for that coming out tomorrow. And you know, it's just a lot of cool content there. And so, like, if you do like it, feel free to sub so you can get the notifications, and we do appreciate it. But whether or not you sub or like the video or anything like that, I just want to thank you guys for coming by the channel, because, you know, just coming in and viewing the content and all that stuff too helps me big time. And I'm really glad to share the stuff that I'm finding with you guys. And, you know, these builds were insanely fun to play, you know, all 3 variations as you saw in the clips. I had a lot of fun playing it, and so I wanted to get out there and share it with you guys so you guys could have the same fun that I had playing it. And then again, you know, like, there was a lot of data missing on, like, for example, seppuku. Like, no matter you go on the wiki, nowhere else, there's no data on seppuku. So I did some damage testing myself to find, you know, how much it was helping with the blood stat, and then how much raw damage it was adding. So, and then for example, on a level 1, I didn't mention this, I tested a level 1 twin blade against the level 25, and the level 1 only added like 32 raw physical damage, but still added, I think, the 110 blood boost. So it still helps a lot in blood procs, but definitely the damage that you get from it, which you expect, right? On a weapon art, you expect it to scale with the level of that weapon, and a lot of times they scale with the base damage of the weapon. So yeah, the seppuku's definitely, you know, once you got to 25, I saw that 320 additional, 319 to be exact, I think, additional damage and 110 blood boost. So that's insane. So definitely be using seppuku until they nerf it or any of this stuff. And again, you know, I tried to bring a lot of, you know, like the different tiers that nobody's using in their flasks and all this stuff, and a lot of the talismans I see aren't being used. I try to, you know, bring this stuff out there to give you guys, like I said, I tried my very best to stay away from being clickbait and all that stuff, and you know, just do my best to get you guys real high efficiency builds, and as much data as I can get you for you know, like, why those builds are better. You know, I want to just be like, because it's the problem is a lot of people are like, oh, what's the best armor, and the people just say this because they think it looks cool. Like, no, I want to get you the best. That's why I made that spreadsheet, to give you the best, like, armor, and it's based off a formula that took into account the 4 physical defenses divided by 4, and it took into account the 4 magic defenses, you know, magic, fire, lightning, that, and divided by 4. And then, you know, we had an actual algorithm that weighed them appropriately, including immunity and robustness, and made a, you know, a spreadsheet that or an algorithm that created a spreadsheet for the best in slot stuff. And definitely go check that video out if you're looking to min-max your armor. But in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoy these builds, and you know, I'll have the faith one up tomorrow. And let me know what you guys think in the comments. You know, if you've been on my channel, you know, I'm really active in the comments. I try to really engage with you guys. So those of you that are new, I appreciate you stopping by, and those returning, we really appreciate you guys sticking around with me. And enjoy the builds, and we'll see you guys next time.